Hello, my love, and welcome back to the Behind the Layers podcast, the podcast where I help women return to their most confident selves. And today is going to be a very personal one, all about breaking free from your anxiety. Because to be honest, anxiety used to rule my life well before I even knew what it was. Constant panic attacks, overthinking 24/7, and just disliking myself. I'm going to spill it all in today's episode, but most importantly, I'm going to teach you the 5 things I learned that actually helped me break free from the anxiety and actually fully heal it, even after my therapist told me that this was just part of who I was. And I totally get why this therapist would say that because it helped me to accept the anxiety instead of trying to push it away. But it also left me with the belief that this was supposed to be my reality, which it was not. So let's spill all the tea today. But before we dive into the episode, if you love listening to this podcast, I would appreciate it if you leave a positive review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you feel like you learned something today after listening, make sure to send it to a friend. I really, really, really appreciate your support in this. I'm trying to grow the podcast because I would love for it to turn into something sustainable, which also means that we can co create this together. If there is anything you want me to talk about, if you want to see something specific, just DM me. Maybe I can make it work. I will try to make it work for you. And also, one thing I want to share before we officially dive in is a little live update. If you are watching this on YouTube or Spotify, you might have noticed my cute little setup that I spent way too much time putting together. It is actually more difficult than you would think to make everything look cohesive. But if you love this setup, it's going to be even better because I am going to move in with my boyfriend in our new place soon. And this place has a dedicated space for my work and also my podcast. And I just ordered the furniture and the paint for the place. It's going to look too cute. I'm not going to spill anything. You're just going to be surprised when the setup changes. And I also wanted to share the good news of me and my boyfriend moving in together because what not many people know is that I'm an avoidant. I have an avoidant attachment style. So moving in with someone, which I've never done before, outside of moving in with roommates or student housing, I can't believe I lived with 10 people at one time in one apartment, which was insane, but it was so, so, so fun. But as an avoidant, moving in with a partner is actually a big thing for me. And while that brings its own challenges in my nervous system, I'm also so extremely excited. So, more about that when the time is due. But back to today's episode. Let's help you break free from your anxiety as well. Because I know the struggle of having to be at war with your own mind and body every single day. So, it might be interesting to start with my own journey with social anxiety because I actually had a diagnosed social anxiety disorder. It got diagnosed in 2018, but well before that, I was already struggling with its symptoms. But I did not know I was struggling with it because I thought everybody was experiencing life this way. I thought everybody felt this insecurity and these fears around life. It didn't dawn on me that this was not a quote unquote normal situation to be in until I hit rock bottom in 2018. But well before then, I would always overthink what others thought of me. I would replay conversations in my head and beat myself up over these little mistakes. I would constantly fear the future and I would avoid social situations or rehearse them to make sure I would not mess up. And the amount of anxiety that brought, like, I was not making it easy for myself. And to be honest, this always left me feeling very drained and frustrated and insecure, and eventually also brought me into depressions because I was just feeling so bad about myself. I was so stressed out all the time. No shit, that eventually I would start to feel the sadness and the depression that came after. And that was just kind of everyday life. There were also some special occasions where, now looking back on it, the size of the reaction I had to these things could have already been signals that something was off. For example, as a teenager, when I would speak to boys or boys would speak to me, I would freak out, not in your normal type of way, but I would turn absolutely red. I would start sweating and I just couldn't get myself to talk to them in real life. Like the amount of anxiety that would come up. I also had this with girls, but with guys, much, much, much more. Like all the insecurities would come up, and then I would freak out about freaking out. I would be afraid that they would see that I was turning red, afraid that they would see that I was afraid or sweating. So eventually I became anxious of the anxiety. I became afraid of the anxiety hitting. Another example was me actually doing presentations. Like, I feel really bad for the little girl who had to go through that, but looking back at it now, it's a little bit funny. But I just remember, like, being absolutely terrified before presentations. I couldn't think straight, and when I would go in front of the class to have a presentation, I would turn red. I would forget everything. I would have actually a panic attack internally without ever realizing what it was. And to top it off, I started stuttering. Like, it was my worst nightmare being in front of a class because the anxiety would totally take me over. But of course, I wasn't always talking to boys. I wasn't always doing a presentation. The biggest problem was how I felt on a day-to-day basis while doing normal everyday things. And once again, I did not know this was not normal. So it kept on happening and it kept on getting worse until in like 2017, 2018, when I was in a full-blown depression. And I don't know what happened, but during that depression, the anxiety just fully took over. And I mean fully. Like now I was convinced people did not like me. Even my friends, I was convinced they didn't want me there. When I would go outside into the city or doing grocery shopping, I was convinced people were judging me and disliking me, even though these people were strangers. And on top of that, I would get these panic attacks on the most random moments. And once again, I did not know these were panic attacks, but they would ruin my days every single day. And it got to a point where I was so afraid to leave the house. And I think at that moment, I knew, like, ooh, something is really off here. I don't think I am supposed to feel this way. And it's funny how similar this is to other stories because with my one-on-one clients, the majority have the same story where they felt uneasy growing up, but over the years, the anxiety and the fear and the insecurity just kind of grew over time until it took over their lives, and then they look back wondering where it came from. So many people tell me, like, yeah, I used to be so okay growing up as a teenager, and now in my 20s or in my 30s, I am so insecure and freaking out so much. And what many of those people don't realize is that it was already there. The anxiety or the triggers for the anxiety were most likely already there. They just grew over time because if you don't listen to your body, it will start screaming because these discomforts are still in there. And there's also a thing called masking, which I was great at. Eventually, I could mask the insecurity until I was so drained that I couldn't fake that mask anymore. And at that time, I learned, okay, there's something behind the mask I actually need to look into. Because once again, what you don't heal grows bigger. And there is this quote that states, the body whispers before it screams. And of course, if you don't listen, it will scream. And that is what happens with a lot of the anxiety cases. Like the discomfort is already there, the negative beliefs about yourself are already there, the worrying is already there, and we don't like it, of course, but we don't really work on it either because it's not a priority or we don't really know how until it takes over our lives, and then we're like, crap, where did that come from? And this goes for all health issues, right? In the body, your normal health, but also your mental health. When you're actually getting into burnout, which is something I experienced at the beginning of the year, the body will already kind of signal like, hey, I'm stressed. Hey, slow down a little bit. And when you don't listen to those whispers, you will have to listen to the screams. Basically, your body shutting down, your brain not working anymore. So you actually have to step down. And it's so important to learn to listen to the body. And I'm pretty good with listening to my mental health, but this year really taught me how to listen to my stress levels as well. But getting back to the anxiety, if you follow me on Instagram for a while, you know my story. You know that after I hit rock bottom, I went to therapy. I started meditation, affirmations, and self help books because I was so dedicated to getting out of that place and actually feeling good about myself. And those things helped a little bit. So I feel like my anxiety went from like a 10 to maybe a 7, sometimes 8. So there was definitely improvement there. But even after all that work, I still feared the opinions of other people. I still felt the insecurities and worries. And I still hid myself and kept myself small. So I knew there was more work to do. So fast forward to today, almost, I think, 7 years later. And I spent the first 3 years trying every tool, everything out there to see what works and what doesn't. On top of that, I created my own methods because sometimes I just felt like there wasn't a good method out there that would help with this specific struggle. And after 3 years, I finally got the confidence I admired in others. And people would also start seeing that in me and actually ask me how I did that. And the reality is, it took me a lot of work. And this was when my mission was built to help other women actually feel good about themselves. And I don't mean like just a self love journey of just loving yourself or just accepting yourself. No, actually feeling full blown confident in who you are, what you bring to the table, and what your life can look like. So that brought me to creating my own roadmap, which I've tested with over 300 people, and every single time it damn works. I've put all of this in a self-paced roadmap where you're going to build unshakable confidence in just 10 weeks, which is crazy. Like, I spent so many years figuring this all out, and now I can help women save so much struggle, but most of all, so much time. And if you're listening to this podcast, that program actually went live today, but for the waitlist only. I think I'm going to officially launch it in the next 2 weeks. So make sure to keep an eye out on my stories or be subscribed to my confidence letters. And looking back at this entire struggle and wasting so many years just being in fight or flight and being at war with my own mind, I don't regret a single thing because it led me here. It led me to help 700,000 people on Instagram, to work one-on-one with you guys, and also to creating this podcast where I help you feel good about yourself and be kind towards yourself and be confident in yourself. Because the only person you have to be with your entire life is you. And I don't want you to spend your life hating or feeling insecure about the only person you actually need to like. So I'm here to help you build that relationship with yourself. So now you know a little bit of my struggle with social anxiety. Now I want to take you through the 5 things I needed to learn to actually break free from that anxiety so you can implement these lessons as well. And some you might have heard before, but believe me, if you are listening to this podcast, you likely need to hear them again. And really stick around for point 4 and 5 because I never see people talk about those 2 things. So the first 3 are going to sound familiar. The last 2, life-changing. Point number 1, your thoughts are in facts. And we've heard it all before, but we don't really listen to it because so many of us still act like they're facts. Maybe we consciously know that they aren't. We still respond as if they are facts. For example, when a thought comes up that you cannot do something, you hold yourself back. When a thought comes up that somebody will judge you, you shrink yourself. Or when you're afraid that you're not good enough, you let that full feeling consume you and once again hold you back. It doesn't matter what you believe to be true. What matters is how you actually respond. And if you still respond to your thoughts as if they are facts, letting them rule your life and your actions, you still take them as facts. But here's the truth: your thoughts are often random. Just listen to that little voice inside your mind and realize that you cannot really count on that little voice. So, there's this practice that I used to do where you just sit on the couch and then you take your talking brain, your thoughts out of your head, and you place it right in front of you on the couch. And just visualize that this is a person and observe that person from talking. So they're just gonna share their thoughts all the time. Don't hold them back, just watch. And what you will find is that they will change opinions very quickly. For example, like, oh, my boss did this to me. What a douchebag. No, but actually, I needed the feedback. Maybe he didn't mean it like that. Back to, you know what? But he could have said it better to me. Like your thoughts are having a full-blown discussion with themselves. And there's not just one opinion there. And the longer you watch this person talk, the more you realize that you cannot trust those thoughts because they're built on nothing. They go from one point to another and they contradict themselves. So we shouldn't let them lead our lives. Just imagine the person you see on the couch contradicting themselves and just going from one place to another. Would you want that person to make the decisions of your life? Personally, I wouldn't. I've heard my own thoughts. They're not going to make the decisions, but we can use them to help make decisions. So if we need to make a specific decisions, of course, we're going to use our thoughts to analyze and see all the different points. But the constant mind chatter is not helping us do anything. So it's really an art of learning how to work with your mind instead of letting your mind lead. Because once again, your thoughts can help you make decisions. They can guide us or show us what needs healing. But they can only do that if we are aware of our triggers and we challenge those thoughts. And what I mean with challenge is if the thought comes up, nobody wants to be with me, or I'm always alone. Is that true? Was there a time where the opposite was true? So was there a time where people actually liked you? Or are there signs that people actually like you? Maybe an invite or maybe people talking to you? Because most of the time there is. And it's better to believe a thought that helps you instead of believing a thought that tears you down. And the more you challenge those thoughts, the more you will realize that the majority of those thoughts are not rooted in facts, not rooted in reality. The main reason why the anxious thoughts comes up is because they want to protect you. And that brings me to point number 2. Your anxiety is just trying to protect you. Anxiety is actually a normal feeling that comes up when it senses danger or a threat. It makes sure that you are alert, which is amazing for the evolution of humans, not so great for the human mind living in an era that is very unnatural, where we're not being chased by lions, but by unanswered emails, where being rejected by others doesn't mean we're going to starve alone, but where we do feel being judged is the end of the world. Anxiety, once again, is a normal emotion trying to protect us. But in today's age, for many, it has become louder than it needs to be, and it goes off for things that are not dangerous. And the moment I realized this, it became so much easier to work with my anxiety instead of pushing it away, because the things you push away don't go away. They will come back stronger. So when I realized my anxiety was trying to protect me, I started working with it as this kind of friend. So instead of once again pushing it away, I asked it, what do you need to feel safe right now? And I started to earn its trust. So for example, I still went to the social event, triggering the anxiety, but I listened to the anxiety and I invited a friend. The same as for when I was going to a hostel all alone and I was really anxious. So I listened to the anxiety and allowed myself to adjust for 2 days before I started walking up to people. The same as when I was going to a restaurant alone and going on a solo date. I allowed myself to find the most comfortable place for me to sit where I would feel the most safe. And when I did that, I was in Barcelona at the time, I believe. I walked so much because I needed to find a place where I would feel the least amount of anxiety. And I found it. And I read my book there and actually enjoyed seeing other people socialize and eat while I was having dinner by myself with a really good book. And here's the magic, because the anxiety wants you to listen, right? Because it wants you to feel safe. And the more you listen to the anxiety, so you don't let it take over your life, but you do start to work with it, the more trust you build with the anxiety. So eventually the body feels like, okay, I'm being heard, so I don't have to scream anymore. If something makes me uncomfortable, I trust that she will respond appropriately. So the more I listened and allowed my anxiety to be there, the more it decreased, which is still insane to me because I spent all these years pushing it away, which is, to be fair, a very normal response to anxiety. So many people, when it comes up, want it to go away, which I get. Uncomfortable emotions, we really do not want them to stay, but they do not go away when we push them away. Which leads me to point number 3, and that is the more you avoid fear, the bigger it gets. There is this positive feedback loop for anxiety and fear, basically meaning that the loop grows stronger every single time. I would say it's a positive feedback loop with very negative consequences. So, this is what that loop looks like. You get triggered. Maybe you want to do something or go into a situation where you feel triggered. So, the anxiety increases. Eventually, the anxiety increases so much that it feels overwhelming or scary. At that time, what a lot of people do is that they avoid the trigger. So they don't go to that party. They stop speaking to someone, or they kind of give up on their plans. And what happens now is that your anxiety will decrease very quickly, which makes you feel good. But over time, this actually grows the fear, because what you're teaching the brain and the nervous system is that it was actually good that the anxiety came up, because now it has stopped you from doing something that was going to be dangerous, and now you feel better. And because you feel better now, I'm going to keep doing it again next time. Take, for example, if I had a presentation coming up, I would be sick on that day and I would feel so much relief. But the next time I would need to do that presentation, because I still needed to do it, the anxiety would come back, and sometimes even worse. So until you face your fears, and I mean in a gentle way, not in a scaring yourself type of way, only then you can change this loop and you can show your brain that even though it felt scary, nothing went wrong. This is why if you keep doing something, you get more confidence. So, for example, with the presentation, if I would do a presentation every week, eventually the anxiety would die down a little bit more if I would feel safe, because my brain would see, oh, nothing happened, she's still fine. And over time, it just breaks the anxiety reaction. And it's so funny looking back on all the exposure exercises I did when I was in my anxiety healing journey. Because if I look at them now, I'm like, why was that scary? But I remember in that moment, it was super scary. I remember having to ask where the bathroom is. Absolutely terrifying. Eventually, I went swimming with friends and I walked to the beach alone in my bikini. I was so afraid of doing that. Or, as I said, going alone for dinner. All of those things terrified me. But after doing them, I felt so much better. So, exposing myself to my fears was the final step of truly breaking free from the anxiety, but not in the way you think. You have to face your fears, but in a different type of way. For someone who feels very unsafe, very anxious, if this person just goes out and faces their biggest fears, what can happen is that it becomes so terrifying that you grow overwhelmed or something goes wrong. Either way, it will show you that indeed it is dangerous, or indeed you cannot do these things. And it actually grows the anxiety over time because you went too far too quickly. Because as someone with social anxiety, I know you have done things that scare you. However, you came back not feeling any better, probably because the step you took to face your fears was a little bit too big. And this is why I created the courage exposure method, because I felt that there was no method specifically for this kind of person. Because, yes, to build confidence, just face your fears, but we need to do it differently. We need to do it in such a gentle way that we don't become afraid while doing it or overwhelmed. And if you do this, it takes a little bit more time, but it brings stable confidence, confidence that is resilient, not confidence that is performative. So you basically did this thing and maybe you even nailed it, but internally you are feeling awful. So, very quickly, if you want to learn the courage exposure method, I am explaining it step by step in Return to Inner Confidence, which is launching in 1 or 2 weeks. So, once again, keep an eye out for my stories and my newsletter. Moving on to number 4, and this one is a powerful one. Let me read it for you. You can only fear what you believe, mostly about yourself, aka the self image. So, this is especially for the anxiety that is around being judged, being rejected, or being disliked. Because I used to feel all of these things, and I was convinced it was because people truly thought that about me and it was because of the external world. But what I didn't realize is that I felt this way and I feared these things because I believed them to be true about myself. I feared others were judging me because I was judging myself in the same way. I feared rejection because I was rejecting myself. And I feared others would dislike me because I believed I was a bad person. So it all truly ties back to how you see yourself. Basically, your self image. And that is what mirrors in the reality in front of you. And here's why that happens. The brain tries to prove the things it already believes. So if you believe people do not like you, your brain will go out of its way to find evidence for that. And then you see that evidence and you grow anxious because you see people do not like me. And there's this amazing example that I used to experience every day. For example, take that you speak to 3 people in a day. 2 of those conversations were lovely, giggling, you had a good conversation. One of those conversations, the person is a little bit more silent. They don't really seem to pay attention. And what my anxious mind would do now is actually take that as evidence that this person does not like talking to me. And then it would blow it up and convince me that indeed people do not like talking to me, blah, 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 and it would keep going and the anxiety would explode. While in reality, what my mind was doing, it was not looking at the proof that people did like to talk to me. So the other 2 people, it would disregard those people and would probably think, yeah, no, they were just being polite. And it would blow up the negative evidence, even though that person could have had a shitty day. It didn't have to do anything with me, but I made it about myself. And this is something many people don't realize as well sometimes with anxiety, especially social anxiety, is that it can be a lot like self-obsession because you think everything is about you, everything says something about you, and you're constantly thinking about yourself. Even when you think you are thinking about the other person, you're often trying to guess what they are thinking about you. Once again, self-obsessed. And self-obsession creates more anxiety. But getting back to the self-image part, healing your self-image is such an important step in overcoming your social anxiety. And I think sometimes this is where social anxiety and general anxiety really differentiate, is that a lot of the social anxiety has to do with the beliefs that you have about yourself, while general anxiety can have multiple things why it is caused. So if you have social anxiety and you also just don't feel good about yourself, most likely there's a self-image problem going on, which is also something we will fully discuss and heal in Return to Inner Confidence. Moving to number 5, your internal belief system will always override your rational mind. And here's what I mean with that. I hear this all the time when I work one-on-one with people. These people tell me, I know I'm good enough. I know I deserve these things. I know people will like me, but still I feel less than others. And they're confused. They're frustrated because why do I still feel this way if I know it's not true? And this is also why most of the affirmations won't do shit if your beliefs don't support that affirmation. Because your rational mind isn't running the show. It's your beliefs. If you believe you're less than others, you will keep feeling less than others. And I had the same thing. I used to be convinced that people did not like me, even though I was invited to things with people. But my mind would tell me, no, they're just being polite. They actually don't want you there. You're going to be the least fun person there. just to convince me of my belief that nobody liked me, even though there was clear evidence that people did like me. So it's crazy what your mind will do to convince you of something that is in alignment with its belief. So this is why it's so important to actually look at your self-image, look at your beliefs that are spiking your social anxiety, because a lot of the healing takes place in overcoming these beliefs. Because even if you do all the other things out there, if these beliefs keep existing, you will always default back to them if you're getting triggered or if you're going through a low in life. So if you want to figure out, okay, what is my main negative self-image, my main negative belief about myself that is causing me to grow socially anxious, I have 3 questions for you that you can start thinking about. And together these questions can bring up the main belief that is causing you to be socially anxious. And they are, what am I afraid others think of me? Because often, once again, you fear what you believe. Next up is, if I mess up, what am I afraid of? What am I afraid of happening? What am I afraid of people will think of me once again? Maybe you're afraid that if you mess up, you are a loser. Or if you mess up, it's proof that you cannot do anything in life. Or the next question would be, why would others dislike me? Would they dislike you because you're boring? Because you're fake? Because you're not funny? If you have those answers, you have a very clear idea of what your self-image is lying about. Because once again, this is not reality. Your self-image is not based on facts, it's based on beliefs. And I would always encourage you to take the beliefs that make you feel better. So it's best to believe people like you, even though, of course, not everybody in the world will like you, than believing nobody likes you. Because once again, it's not true. Some people do. Always pick the belief that makes you feel better, or simply challenge your beliefs. So your final reminder for today, your anxiety is not here to ruin your day. It is just waiting for you to work with it and use it as a guide to what needs healing. So if you feel ready to build the type of confidence that will ease your social anxiety, make sure to join Return to Inner Confidence, launching in the next few weeks. But for now, if you feel like you learned something today, make sure to leave a positive review and share it with a friend. And I hope to see you here again next Tuesday.